Welcome to .NET training sessions. In this session, we're going to continue the introduction towards .NET. In the first part of introduction towards .NET, we understood why Microsoft .NET, what is Microsoft .NET. In this part 2 of Microsoft .NET introduction, we would like to understand how Microsoft .NET differ from other languages like C, C++ or Java in terms of behavioral. Later, we are going to understand the architecture of Microsoft .NET, where we are going to define what is a framework, class library, a base class library. Then we are going to understand the brain of the .NET, that is the common language runtime, and few of the components in CLR, where we are going to understand about common type systems, common language specifications, and also we are going to talk about garbage collector, and finally we are going to give a quick glance on Visual Studio Designer. So let us understand this all in step-by-step manner. So now let us understand how Microsoft .NET differ from other languages. Now let us focus on the traditional programming language C. Now in C, a developer will first write a program in a language that he understands. I mean to say, I can write the C program in English. I can also write a C program in French. As I understand English, I will write in English. As I understand French, I might write in French because I have a lot of keyboards in the market through which I can give my input. So, ideally what happens? A developer in any programming language, in our concern, it is a C programming language. A C developer will write a code in a language that he understands, and that type of code is called source code. So in our case, the source code is, let's say, hello.c. So I am writing a program hello.c, in which I am going to write some instructions in a language that I understand. That is called a source code. Now computer, what is the next step we do? After writing a source code, people say I am compiling the code. So once I compile, I get something called object code, which will have an extension called .hello.obj. So first let us understand what is this obj code will have. What do we mean by compile? Now I am having a source code which is in a language that I understand, let's say in English, but a computer can't understand English. It will understand 0 and 1s. So we need a translator. So in the market, we have 3 types of translators throughout the generation. The first one came into life, assembler, then the compiler and interpreter. So all the 3 translators have a common goal. Take a high level instruction and give it to a low level instruction. Now let's understand them slowly and we will come back to the journey of C language. So now when I'm talking about 70s, that time computers were in very big size. People say we say mainframe systems. So that time we never had any keyboard to give some input. So that time the developer was giving instructions to a mainframe system through a device which is called a simple punched card. So punched card was the input device through which developer will give an input, and that is something like 10110, something like that. So this instruction is more or less a binary level, but still the developer was giving the instruction in this manner, and that is translated by the assembler so that the mainframe systems can understand. Here is the first level of translations we had. Over 70s, developers, the scientists felt that every common man can't give instructions using a punched card. So they thrown away the punched cards, and in the market they released standard input device, a keyboard. So now the person, a common man, can give instructions through a keyboard in a language that he understands. So I am able to write now in English through my keyboard. But the problem is what? Who is going to translate that? There compilers and interpreters came into picture. So what is the purpose of compiler and interpreter? They take the input instructions which are written in a high level language, that is for our case is in English, and translate them into machine code. So what is the difference between a compiler and an interpreter? Compiler will take all the lines of instructions at one stretch and translate it, whereas interpreter will do translation line by line. So what you feel? Compiler is definitely much faster than interpreter, but it also have a drawback. Assume you have written some 19 lines of code and somewhere the error is on third line. So if I take a compiler, irrespective of checking that error, it will translate all the 19 lines. So it will increase the time complexity to execute that algorithm. But if I had used interpreter, at the line 3 or 4, I would have pointed out the error and would stop debugging the program. So more or less compiler and interpreters are given respect. But remember, to learn a language or to implement a language, minimum one translator is required. For example, I am a C developer. So I need a Turbo C compiler to implement my C program. I need Turbo C++ compiler to implement my C++ program. If I take Java, I need a compiler by name Java C to compile the code. I need Java interpreter to run my code. So what is exactly happening over here is some programming languages require both compilers as well as interpreter. But remember, at least one translator is required to implement my code. Okay, so now come back to our C understanding. So in C language, the developer will write a code in a language that he understands. So a source code is there, hello.c. Now I compile the code, it's translated. So I get hello.obj. Now it is a machine instruction code. Now while doing compile, I might get no errors or I might get errors and also warnings. So if I write and translate, If I have written the source code with perfect syntax, definitely I won't get any errors. If I've done some mistakes, then the compiler will display all the errors as well warnings. So errors are basically syntax based errors. You might have not written syntax properly, you may end up getting errors. Warnings are logical type of things. Like suppose I'm trying to print 19 by 0. 19 by 0 syntactically it is correct, but logically it may lead to divide by 0. It may lead to infinity. So that kind of things are called warnings. So I write my source code, we compile the code. If everything is fine, I move on to the next level. So remember, I might have thousands and thousands of warnings, but I should not have even one error. Even one error is there, I cannot move to the next phase. And the next phase is run. So when I run the code in the C compiler, I get now the exe code, or we say executable code, and that will have an extension .exe. So in C language, I am writing only one file, that is hello.c, that is a source code. I compile to generate object code, which will contain machine understandable code. Everything fine, I run the code to generate hello.exe. So I have a source code, I have a machine code, I have a exe code. So which code need to be given to the customer? Customer always go for the executable file. He is least bothered about the source code and the machine code. And even though if we give him, there might be a chance of piracy, or it may be a chance to override your code. That it should not happen. So always we give a exe code. But what is the problem of this code? The problem of this code is it is not platform independent. I mean to say, in 70s if I use C programming to develop a simple notepad or some application I'm just developing. Now this application, if it works in one machine, let's say I move on the same exe file to other machine. The other machine might have a different platform. I mean to say, it might have a different hardware. It might have a different operating system. It might have some other applications running on it. So it may not support, or it may not resist properly in another machine or any other platform. So that is a drawback of C programming. C is very good to develop a standalone applications, but the problem with this exe code was it is not platform independent code. So we need some solution. I mean, that is how a C programming language runs. Now, if I take a Java programming, so again I will write a source code, but this time the file might be hello.java based on a different syntax, but ultimately it's again a source code. I will be writing in a language that I understand. Now here we compile. Here when we compile, we get something called hello.class, which is a machine understandable code, but it is a platform independent code. I mean to say, if I move on the class to anywhere, it will be having proper consistent instructions. It will work anywhere you port it. So write once and put anywhere is what the concept of Java. I run, I get the exe file. So this time this exe file is platform independent. It can go anywhere. That is how a Java programming language refer. So C or old programming languages like Pascal, Fortran, they are specific, or I would say they are not platform independent, but the Java is a platform independent application environment. That's fine. So now this is how a normal programming code behaves. But how are .NET differ? In the starting session itself I said Microsoft .NET is multilingual, multi-app environment. So I have under .NET 60 different languages. Now I will be selecting one language and I develop an application, and it could be a console, window or web. I will like to deploy it. So how it is going to be different, let us understand. So we talked about something called, in C we say I compile, in Java we say I compile, but in .NET we never say like that. We say we build the code. So in .NET what we do is, the first step what it is been done, a C developer is there. Now a C developer will select one of the .NET language. Let us say I am selecting C# .NET. Someone else will select VB.NET. So now what we need to understand over here is, in the as like your programming languages like C or C++, here we are not going to compile the code. We are going to say we build the code. So what do you mean by that? Let us understand. So now always remember, build is actually compile plus link. We have understood only one thing, that is compile. That is translating the code from one X language to a machine language. Then what is this link? We need to understand. So for that we need to understand something called library. So what we're going to do now is, first we're going to understand what is static linked library, what is dynamically linked library, okay, what are assemblies, and that connects to a topic called build. So we're trying to understand build little more deeper. Once we understand build properly, then we're going to move on to understand how C#.NET differ from other languages. So now there is something called SLL, static linked library. So what is a library? Basically a collection of, when we talk about a general library, it is a collection of some books, and the books will have certain information which can be reused as many times by a student. In the same way, here we have certain library. Let us say I want to draw some graphics. So I might refer a library called graphics library, which will support some functions through which I can develop some graphical application. Now let us say I am using a C language to make you understand. So let us say I want to develop some graphical application in C language. So what I do, I will try to include the graphics.h header file in my program. So I am going to write a C program in which I have my main function with me. Now in this main function, I am going to write some graphics application, let's say draw rect, and some functionality I'll write it. So since I am using draw rect function, I am including this library. Okay, so now I write the code, I compile the code, I run the code, I get a exe code. Now that exe code I need to give to the customer. Now what is the advantage in C language is, the library that we are using in our program is given with the exe itself. So exe includes the library, so the customer will never have any problem to get the reference to this library. That is fine. Now over a time frame, the same code, you have added another library. So again a new exe is given which will include the new library. Like this you keep on adding, changing, adding, changing. You have to keep on updating the customer. So it's an easy job to go on and it works fine. But this was going on fine in 70s, 80s. But in 90s what happened? Microsoft introduced Windows operating system. Now Windows operating system is a heavy operating system. I mean, in 70s, even you take a game, it would be 20 to 30 kilobytes. But whereas what happened suddenly in Windows 95 introduced, it is in MBs or GBs. So I cannot give my customer the entire Windows operating system library since using in an application. So we need a separation now. So exe should be independent and the library should be independent. For example, if you take, now I am developing an application called Notepad. Now Notepad, when it runs at runtime it is going to check in the Windows operating system a certain library. If it is existing, then the Notepad will work fine. So Notepad is an application, independent exe, which is trying to link the library which is in the operating system. So that is dynamic linked library. So in early stages there was only something called static linked library, whereas in the later sessions we had dynamic linked library. So that is called build. So when we run the code at the runtime is trying to link the library. Okay, now we have understood something called a build, which is nothing but a compile plus a link. So let's come back to our C#.NET approach. In C#.NET, the developer will first select a language in which he is going to write the code. So let's say I am selecting C#.NET code as my choice to write my application. Now, after writing my source code, I will build the code. So when I build my code, what is going to happen? Once I build my code, now I am going to get an output called p.e, portable executable file. Portable executable file will have an extension .dll or we say .exe. By default it is .exe, but you want to make a .dll, you can create it. Now what does this file consist of? This portable executable file will include a code which is called MSIL, Microsoft Intermediate Language Code, which is very similar to a byte code in Java. So in Java what happens? We write the code, we compile the code to get a byte code. Now whereas here in .NET it is a little different way. We build the code but we get a PE file which includes MSIL code, Microsoft Intermediate Language Code, and the metadata. It is an XML file which will give information about this language code. So MSIL code is a platform independent code which will resist in every environment where you try to port the application. So that is one step. So we write a source code in a one .NET language that we select. We build the code which generates PE file which will have an extension .exe or .dll. By default it's .exe, and over there it includes MSIL file. Now this MSIL file is given to a brain of the .NET, that is CLR, Common Language Runtime. This Common Language Runtime is responsible to take this code and run in the native environment. Let's say you have developed a code in a system with Windows operating system, but your customer or some destination might have a different hardware, a different operating system. So this CLR will manage the entire code what is written in terms of thread management, memory management, whatever the concern. It will take care and it will try to execute in the native machines of different platforms. That is where the CLR will come into picture. So here it is a multilingual selection and develop an application which will generate a particular code, that is portable executable code. This is how it is little different in terms of approach. So we have just understood how a .NET developer will behave little different from a C or a Java developer. Now we move on to the next session of this particular learning is to understand the .NET architecture. So whenever we talk about .NET architecture, there are three things that you need to understand at a high level. The first thing is a framework. As I discussed in the first part, of the .NET introduction, .NET is a framework, I said. Java is a framework and a language. So first we need to understand what is exactly a framework, and where we talk about something called BCL and FCL of .NET. Then we're going to understand the CLR major components, and finally we're going to understand Visual Studio Designer in a brief way. Now let us understand framework. People say .NET is a framework. Obviously Java is also a framework. So what is exactly this framework? Why this word has come? So technically when I talk about a framework, these are ready to use components. So ready to use classes, ready to use interfaces, which might we take it as it is, or we try to extend it with some other code that you attach to it. So we come back to this all in more detail, but let's understand why these people are talking about this framework. So now remember, in the IT world there are only two major actors. One is the developer and the second one is the customer. So what a developer does, a developer will definitely design, develop, deploy the code. A customer will consume the deployed code or an exe or an application developed by a developer in a particular language. So now as a developer, what I require, as a customer, what I require, we need to understand. Now as a developer, I require one thing, that is an IDE, integrated development environment. We'll talk about it. Second thing, I require a library we call a runtime library. Customer do not require an IDE because he is not going to do any code. So, but he requires only runtime library. So what is an IDE? Let us understand. Now let us say I am a painter. So what I require? I require certain environment. Like I need a paper, I need some crayons to implement my idea. Now I am not a painter, now I am a developer. So definitely what is my purpose? I have to code, I have to compile, I have to debug. So many things I would like to do it. So I need a certain kind of environment which I would like to utilize it and perform my job. So for example, I want to write a C program. So what I do? I need a IDE. So I use Turbo C IDE. There is a company by name Borland International. That particular company developed a compiler, or we say an IDE, Turbo C or Turbo C++. I used it to write my code. Okay, I have a IDE. So I go and I just a whistle, I clap, I sing. Will the work been done? No. So, and if I write as I like, will it work? Will not work. So I need to follow certain syntax first thing. I need to consume certain library to write my code. For example, my goal is to create a calculator, let us say, or I want to create a graphical application. So I open an IDE. I'll write the code by following certain syntax, and in that code I would like to refer some libraries, then I will finish my job. So I am dependent on two things. As a developer, I need an IDE or a playground where I can write the code, and second thing, to play well or to do code well, I need to refer a library. So I will use a graphics library which is ready to use, and I try to construct. For example, I want to construct a rectangle. Let us say I want to write a program which will display a rectangle. So there are two ways I can do. I can write myself, I take 4 points x1, y1, x2, y2, x3, y3, x4, y4, and I try to do it myself. Some logic, some algorithm I want to do it, and I'll create a rectangle. But if someone is giving a ready-made, If someone is giving me a ready-made library to draw a rectangle, definitely I can save my time. For example, I want to I want to have daily a tiffin. So what I do, suppose I want to have idli daily as my tiffin. What is the first way we can do? I will soak the dal, next day I grind it, and morning I try to make the idli. Since I have a time, I am able to do it. Imagine you get a job and you got very busy schedule and you cannot spend so much of time. Then what you do? You take a ready-made mix. That is your framework. A ready-made mix is a idli powder or whatever you can dough we can talk about, that you take directly and prepare your idli. So it is saving your time and lot of efforts. That is where. Suppose you want to garnish with some vegetables. Over that you are trying to make a vegetable idli. So what is happening? Framework, you can take it. Framework is always a ready to use object which we can consume as it is, or using that you try to do wonders. See, suppose I have a ready mix idli mix. I can use it directly. I can finish simply by having idli. But over that you try to put some vegetables or some other ingredients to make it more popular. You can use that way also. So that is a choice. So framework are always ready things which we take it, consume it and prepare some new things. So that is the advantage of framework. So that is a developer role. So developer will use this library and use the application. Now the runtime library is given with different names over the generations. In C language, the runtime library consumed by the C developers is given in the form of header files. So the runtime library for C developers is given in the form of header files. Example, graphics.h. What this library file will contain? Certain set of functions like draw rectangle or seed point. Something like this, it will give some functions. Now, over time frame, this is I'm talking about 70s. In 80s, object orientation programming came into existence, Java. So people started writing classes, objects, constructors, destructors. So slowly they were adapted towards object orientation concept. So they were not happy with C header files to carry on. So they wanted the same libraries but in a different manner. That is object orientation or object based manner. So Java people were giving the same runtime library not in the form of header files. They said we give you packages. For example, I am having a package called system.lang. You have something called java.lang. So java.lang is a package which will have classes. Like system is a class or something. You can talk about lot of classes given in Java. Now in early 2002, Microsoft introduced .NET. So Microsoft said we provide the same runtime library, not in the form of header files, not in the form of packages. We give it in the form of namespaces. For example, we have system dot something called security, let us say, which will have certain classes like SQL, connection, or it might have some other type of classes. So what you observe over here is, here the library, runtime library is given by different vendors with different names, but all are what? Ready to use classes or functionalities which we take if you want as it is, or you try to extend them. So if you imagine the packages or namespaces like a tree, generally in real world the tree root will be down and the root will have branches, branches will have sub branches, and sub branches will have leaves. So the ultimate child is the leaf. So the leaf in C language are the functions. The leaf in Java and .NET are classes. So suppose java.lang, what does it mean? Java is the root. Under that there is a branch called lang. Under that there is a leaf called system. In the same way, system dot, let us say I have system dot data dot SQL client is my namespace, let's say. So system is a root. Under that there is a branch called data. Under that there is a branch called SQL client. Under that branch there is a leaf called SQL connection class. So that is how you need to understand the library format. So framework are ready-made classes and interfaces which can be used by the developer as a directly, or you can extend them with your existing code. That is talking about a framework. Now the customer doesn't require an IDE, but he requires a library. Means what? For example, I develop an application. I am developing an application to let us say I developed an application, let's say, or I developed a game, let us say. Now this game I would like to install. So first option is I have a laptop in which already .NET framework is installed. So what will happen? Because as on today, every Windows operating system is having a .NET framework pre-installed. So definitely this application will run happily. Imagine I have a laptop where we are having a Mac operating system. So where Mac operating system will not have the .NET library. So the moment when you try to install the game, it will give a message. Please go to Microsoft website and download this particular library. Then you download it, it will run. That is what you need to understand. So customer definitely requires the library. And remember, the runtime library is free. If it is not given free, none of the customers will use that application. They just uninstall the application. So remember, always the runtime library is free, but the IDEs are paid. Like Microsoft uses what? Microsoft developers uses Visual Studio .NET IDE to develop the code. Some people will use Eclipse IDE to write the Java programs. Like this we need IDEs. So these IDEs are paid basically, but the libraries are free in the market. So we have understood about a framework. Framework are the ready to use classes and interfaces which can be consumed directly or extended through our code. Fine. Now we will understand the brain of the .NET, that is Common Language Runtime. So Common Language Runtime is the brain of the .NET software which will manage the code written by the .NET developer. So what is it exactly going to manage? It is going to manage the code level, it is going to manage at thread level, all the security features, whatever it can manage in the memory management, it will handle it properly. Now let us understand the CLR major components. Like CTS is the foremost thing you need to understand. Common Type System, or we say CTS, or Common Data Type System. Now if you remember, in the first part of the .NET introduction session, I said Microsoft wanted to develop a software which is interoperable, or we say language independent software. Now we need to understand over here how it is possible, how it is making things to happen with the concept of interoperability. Now let us say I have a C developer. He says I am having a code to find the reverse of a number. So what I am saying is I am having a ready-made code with me to find the reverse of a number. Now I ask, can you rewrite this code in Java? So many people say, no, I don't know syntax of Java, so how I will write it? This is one of the problem you find it. But that's not the exact problem. Until Google is there or some books we refer, we get the syntax. And majorly 80% of programming languages, the syntax is same. Yes, I agree, syntax is a cause, but not that is a main root cause. The root cause analysis is different. The problem is with the data types. For example, in C language, int data type will occupy 2 bytes of memory. Now in Java, the same int data type will take 4 bytes of memory. So does the size mattering over here? No. Size is not the issue over here. The issue is the range. For example, in C language, int, if I declare int variable s, it will occupy 2 bytes memory, but the range is what? The minimum value I can store is minus 32,767 and the maximum value I store is 768. So if I try to write a code in Java and try to call it in C, it may not work because the range is very big for 4 bytes when compared to 2 bytes. So remember, the problem is coming with the range, not with the size. So the main problem from taking one language code to another language, the main problem will come is data types, not the syntax. People feel that I cannot call a C#.NET code in VB.NET, VB.NET code in C#.NET, only not the matter of syntax. The main thing is the data type. So now how Microsoft is solving this issue? So what happens in .NET is, in .NET we have 60 different languages like C#.NET and let's say VB.NET and so on, many languages are there. Now in C#.NET there is a data type called int. Now that int data type is not available in VB.NET. It is having integer data type. So how I am able to call a C#.NET code or a class in VB.NET? That is what we have to be careful. So now what it says, in .NET family, every .NET language will have something called local data types. So int is local to C#.NET. Integer is local to VB.NET. So I'll do my regular job. That is, I will write my C#.NET code. Fine. I build the code. Once I build the code, what I get? I'll get MSIL code. In the MSIL code, automatically this local data type is mapped to a CTS data type. That is your int32 data type. For some other data type, there will be another CTS type. So for every local data type, there will be a mapping CTS data type. What is the advantage? Using that facility, I can call this particular code in VB.NET. In the same way, integer in local it will be integer, but the moment when I build the code in MSIL code, this integer code is converted to again CTS type int32. So what you observe here is int32 is available in C#. It is also available in VB.NET, a generic data type, but you didn't declare. It is taken care yourself by the compiler. So here one thing. So when I am trying to develop an application, initially I may not be interested to call a C#.NET code in VB.NET or VB.NET code in C#.NET. Initially you may not, but over a time frame you may require. So what you need to do yourself is you leave it to the compiler. So what you do your regular job, the compiler will do their regular job converting local type to mapping data type. But you feel that no, initially I want to use directly a mapping data type, you're welcome. You can still use directly int32. So all those we're going to see in the technical sessions. But as on today, you need to understand here is something like if you want to interoperate, the interoperability in the .NET family programming languages is done with the concept of CTS, Common Type System. Now that is one point. The next point is CLS, Common Language Specification. Now when I talk about a common language specification, now let us say common language specifications are certain rules or specifications which you need to follow to develop a software component or a language. For example, you are a small company, you innovatively you want to create a new language called Z#.NET, which is not existing in this world, and you want to donate to Microsoft. Microsoft will not accept as you give it. So you need to follow certain specifications to create a new language and donate to Microsoft. You may not be a big company, you want to develop a small function. You feel that I can write a better .NET square root function. You create it, then you donate to Microsoft. For that again you need to follow some specifications, and that is what common language specifications we are talking about. Now the third component of CLR is garbage collector. Now this garbage collector we need to understand neatly. Now in programming, when we do as a developer, there is something called memory allocation. So now let us say I declare an array in C language. Let us say I have a char name. Now what exactly happens over here is I give a character name array of 5. So in this char name of, I'm talking about a C language syntax. In C language I want to store a name. So what I do is I can do this way. Let us, I'm trying to give a name. Let us say P, let's say R, let's say A. Now I have given a name. Let us say I am given a name. Let us say Pratty. So now this is my code where I can store max of 5 characters, but every person name may not have 5 characters. So what I do, I may give only 3 characters, then waste of 2 bits of memory. This way of memory is called static memory. Now the same name, if I want to give dynamic memory allocation, we can give this way. If I give 5 characters, it will take 5 characters. If I give more number of characters, it will take more memory. So what is happening in traditional C programming language or C++ programming language, what is happening? The memory is allocated by the programmer and deallocated by the programmer. Okay, so now there are certain functions called malloc, calloc in C language, free, delete are the few functions through which they allocate memory, deallocate memory, just for information. So what I'm trying to say is in C language, C developers, I mean talking about before Java or .NET came into picture, the programmer was solely dependent to allocate memory and deallocate memory for the variables or the code which he is responsible. So what is happening in this practice? Industry faced a problem called memory leakage problem. So what is a memory leakage problem? A well-defined object, if it is not maintained properly by a programmer, it will go out of hand. How to understand this? Let us say there is a college. In the college, there is a principal and there are some faculties. So principal says, take this attendance register, that is my object, attendance register, and give it to the faculty, and says that properly take the attendance in the class. By end of the month I need a proper attendance. So if this attendance register is maintained properly, by taking proper attendance, everyone will get the perfect attendance. It is maintained perfectly. But being manual, you may do mistake. You may not take attendance first day, or after 10 days you won't take. So you try to copy the attendance from some other faculty and try to manipulate some dummy attendance. So that may create some problem. That is an example of a memory leakage. In the same way, when the developer is writing a lot of code, definitely he might do some mistake or might forget. Whatever may the good or bad reason, ultimately the object will go out of hand. That is the problem of memory leakage. So to overcome this memory leakage problem, the Java and .NET people came up with a solution called auto memory management. So garbage collector is a component through which I can leave the memory management to himself. So he doesn't force you. what he says, if you are capable of managing properly, because some rigid programmers will be there in the market who feels that they can allocate and deallocate properly, then it's your risk. If not, give it to the garbage collector who has a very good memory management system to allocate and deallocate the objects not in use. So now let us understand what does this mean of managing the objects. Now let us say there is a classroom. In the classroom there is a faculty and some objects like fan, table, and desk and so on, and a blackboard and so on. Now outside the classroom there are few students waiting. So initially classroom is empty. Now one student will come into the classroom. Now my question is, when the faculty is ready to move from the class, I mean when he can leave the class, is something like when the object is ready for deallocation. See, when you're talking about garbage collector, you're trying to say that reallocating or deallocating the memory. So my question is, in a classroom a faculty is there, outside the classroom some students were there. So each student is coming inside the classroom, and now my question is like to answer is when the faculty is ready to leave the classroom. Suppose a faculty gets a call, he cannot leave. A student gets a call, he cannot leave. Only the faculty is ready to leave the classroom provided none of the class students are referring him. Even one student is listening in the class, he has to be stay. So when all the students go away from the classroom, then only the case is ready to leave the classroom. So a garbage collector, what it does, now I write a code, the code is running and a lot of objects are created in the memory, everything goes fine. So when the garbage collector will come, what is the purpose of garbage collector? Garbage collector will come, take away all the objects which are ready for deallocation. So how to understand much better this example? Now let's say it's a weekend. Now my parents are going out of station. I got the freedom. So what I do, I eat as much I like, I drink as much I like, and make dirty my room. Now suddenly I receive a call, they're coming back in an hour. Then what I do, I will take myself the responsibility to clean everything and throw it out. That is one option. That is like your C developer who is taking the self responsibility to clean it up. What is the other way we have? The other way is you will call your maid. He is the garbage collector. She is a private maid for you. She will come and take away all the objects which are ready for disposal. Suppose you are drinking a cool drink. She will not come and take away that cool drink. What she will do is, she will take away all the things which you have thrown in the dustbin, which is ready for disposal. So garbage collect, and there is a public fellow also, like every day a municipal corporation fellow is there. He is also a garbage collector. He will come and take away all the objects which are ready in dustbin. So basically garbage collector component is a part of .NET software which will take the option to allocate and deallocate the memory properly. Okay, so we have understood as of now the concept of like the architecture. In the architecture, first we understood what is framework. Second, we have understood few major components of the CLR. Few we will be discussing in the later sessions. And the third one which is left out is the Visual Studio Designer. So what is the software that we are using in the market? That is what we need to understand. So we are going to use Visual Studio.NET as an IDE to create, develop, deploy our code. So it is also part of our architecture. So now let us understand this concept of Visual Studio.NET. So remember, there are two things. As I said, as a developer I require two things, IDE and the framework. So now you need to understand here is the versions of framework are different, the versions of IDE are different. So if I talk about .NET, so no one will say that I am teaching you Visual Studio .NET 2012, they don't say. They say that I am teaching you .NET 2, .NET 3. So the framework versions if you take, we have .NET 1.0, This is, then we had 2.1.1, then we had 2.0, then we had 3.0, then we had 3.5, then we had 4.0, then we had 4.1 series started, then 4.5 came, and after that what happened, these are all the frameworks which will help us to create applications which can run on Windows operating system only. Now after that they wanted to continue 5 series, but they stopped that, and in parallel they introduced something called .NET Core 1.0. Then the latest came 2.0. So as of now it is 2.0 .NET Core. These are the framework versions. These are all are free. So if an application I want to develop with certain features, particular library I require, those libraries might differ with version. Suppose you try to create some service application using .NET 1.0, it's not possible because that framework doesn't support certain libraries. I would say it doesn't provide certain classes which I can use it and create something wonders. It's not possible. So every framework will contain a boundary of some libraries only. Those libraries I can use it or extend it to create my application. So generally when we talk about framework as on today, it is like one is .NET Windows framework and one is .NET Core. .NET Core is using the library I can develop an application which is cross-platform, but this is only, it will work with Windows platform. These are the framework versions. Now there are some Visual Studio versions. The first version of Visual Studio, when we talk about Visual Studio 2002, it was released in the year 2002 in the Feb month. Then 2002 was there, then 2003 came, 2005 came, then 2007, then 2010 came directly, then we have 12, then we had 13, then we had 15, then 17, and as on today we have 2019. So remember, always one Visual Studio will have a mapping framework. For example, I install Visual Studio 2002 in my system. A mapping framework is installed, that is .NET 1.0. Now let's say if I install Visual Studio 2019, the latest framework will get installed. So every studio will have a mapping framework attached. So if someone says I am teaching .NET 4.5, so definitely he is going to use the latest 17 or 19 Visual Studio version to explain you. See, he cannot use, see, .NET 4.5 framework might support some big libraries through which I can create wonderful applications, but if I have a framework 4.5, I cannot use a Visual Studio 2002 to implement those all. So every framework has certain libraries mapping a Visual Studio. So using a Visual Studio version, proper version, I can utilize both of them together. So framework versions are different, IDEs are different. We'll talk about this more later in the session of Visual Studio installations and so on. So in this session, we have basically understood the .NET architecture in major and how MS.NET works. Hope you liked my session.